Is the Blue Jackets goaltending prospect pool deep enough? We're going to talk about that. Plus, what should they do at the draft this summer? All coming up today on Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, I've got the final part of my chat with Will Scouch, Scouching today, and we're talking about goaltending. It's been a minute since we've talked about goalies on the show, and you know that we love to talk about goalies on this show, so that's what we're going to do. We've got Will Scouch here, and we're going to talk all about the goaltending prospect pool. Is it deep enough? Do they need to add to it? And speaking of adding to the prospect pool, we also check in with plays that are available at the draft for the positions that the Blue Jackets are drafting in. What do they do with these picks? Should they keep them, trade them? If they do keep them, like, who do they pick with these picks? So I'm just going to get into my conversation with Will, where we talk about all of that. Let's talk goalies. Now, I know that you're not like a huge goalie guy, mostly because goalies are voodoo. But there are a couple of guys that I wanted to talk about kind of in the Blue Jacket system. And when I mentioned these off mic, you made a very interesting face about one of them. So I want to talk a little bit about Sergei Ivanov. I want to talk first about Evan Gardner, who drafted in the second round, has kind of had one of those weird careers so far where, you know, in his like D-2, I believe, he got sent back to AAA, and then he showed up in his D-1 year and took the starting role. And then last year, obviously, was the full-time starter for Saskatoon, I believe.
Saskatoon Blades.
What's up with Gardner? Like, what does the data say on Gardner?
I mean, it's still good. I think his workload in Saskatoon, I don't think the team was as good this year as they were last year. Yeah, they lost in the first round this year. How many points did they have this season? 82. Last season, I think they were better than that. They had a 105 point season last year. So the team got 83 points worse. So, and when I look at Gardner, you know, obviously an 884 save percentage in the playoffs is no good. But when you have a guy who, let's see, he faced 30 or more shots in every playoff game and faced 35 or more in 3 of those 4, that's a tough situation to win games in. That's a really tough situation to win games in. So he was facing an onslaught from Calgary, and they got steamrolled. I still look at him. I saw him last year as one of the best goalies available, and I think you bet on that long term. He's just so athletic and so quick in the crease, and reads play really well. And I mean, yeah, like, goalies are weird for sure. But when you look at sort of the deeper numbers and looking at sort of how the team played in front of him and how he performed relative to that, he was a net positive. He was a guy who was keeping the puck out of the net more than expected, and that's all you can really ask for. So for me, there's obviously lots of hope there. You know, maybe he gets traded to a team that's more of a contender in the WHL and he can really sort of take off there. Maybe Saskatoon reloads and comes back really good next year again. Who knows? But I think it's just a matter of the team in front of him just not being quite as high end. You know, they traded away a guy like Tanner Molendyk. So there's a lot of different names up there that are in front of him, and they just came out a little bit worse than they were last year. And that makes goaltending a lot more difficult. So yeah, I mean, I'm still on the bus. I still think he was a good pick. And he's a goaltender, and it seems like Columbus has been pretty decent at developing goaltenders over the years, especially when they take the long road and take their time.
Yes. Mixed results if you ask the fan base, but I think for the most part, they've had more hits than misses, let's say. Mm-hmm. The other guy that I want to talk about, Sergei Ivanov, the KHL notoriously likes to pad its stats, I feel like. But he is a I believe he's listed officially at 5'11", which I assume means he's probably closer to 5'8" or 5'9". And he was
Possibly.
still, I believe, like a 915 save percentage as a 20-year-old
Mhm.
in the KHL. And I feel like it's very rare for a young player, especially a goalie, to play minutes in the KHL.
Yes, that is true. And I know that Sochi is not always the best team. They were better. They were much better this year than they have been in years past. And I know that they are, I mean, technically he's a member of St. Petersburg. So he's not, he's not Sochi property, but he was loaned there to play in the KHL, which is probably the right move. I mean, I've always really loved Sergei Ivanov. I always, with Russian goaltenders, I am very lukewarm on exactly how good they are in the NHL. But I am of the belief that Russia is churning out some real good goaltending over the last decade or so, especially when you compare it to places like Canada, arguably the US in the last 5 years or so. A lot of really good goaltenders are coming out of Russia, in my opinion. And Ivanov is certainly there, right? Like, he did face a pretty tough workload from what I looked at before the show today. He was, I would say, like a net zero goaltender. Like, he stopped about as much as expected, and everything was kind of fine with him on a team that allowed quite a bit on him as a 20-year-old in the KHL. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. And the great thing about a guy like Ivanov is he's going to play in the KHL again next year. He's listed as on St. Petersburg's roster, so we'll see what happens there. So if he's there, that's a good team to be with. And you could leave him there for 3 more years, right? You don't lose the rights to him, and you don't have to sign him until when you're ready. So you can afford to be patient until someone like an Elvis Merzlikins is on his way out or whatever. And if he's a KHL all-star goaltender and you get to sort of sign him whenever you want, like, that's also, I know, a strategy for a lot of NHL teams is they're drafting these Russian goaltenders and going, well, I don't know, but like, if we need them when they're 24, 25, we don't have to worry. We can give them a call and we're the only team that can sign them. So who knows? But I've always liked him, and I don't know what that means, but KHL goaltender doing okay is not nothing, especially when he's been there off and on for a couple of seasons now.
He stops the puck and has stopped the puck for a lot of his career.
Yes.
Which I believe is what you told me the first time we talked about goalie prospects. Yes. You're like, if they stop the puck, that probably means good things. So,
yeah. Stop the puck as much as you can. I don't care how. Just do it.
Yeah. Before I get back to my conversation with Will, I want to tell you all about Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. They are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack. I just traveled up from London yesterday, and you better believe that I picked myself up a packet of Wonderful Pistachios to eat 14 at a time, like the gremlin that I am. But if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snackin and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So I want to kind of talk about the Blue Jackets have a couple of first-round picks this year. I'm not convinced that they're going to keep both of them. They're almost definitely going to trade one of them away, but it's mock draft season. It's always so interesting because the Blue Jackets are not in a position right now where they're like, oh, they could get one of, they're going to draft. They're not drafting in the top 5, let's say.
Right.
13th and 20th overall, I believe, is where they are. And this draft is hella weird. They could draft one of 25 guys at 13th, and I think that would be not a terrible thing. But while we're talking about goalies, I don't recall who. I feel like it was maybe Corey Pronman had the Blue Jackets taken Ravensburgen out of Prince George with that 20th overall pick. Do you have like a rebuttal to that? Is that about where he should go, do you think? You can never have too many goalies, is the thing.
No. I mean, I'm always anti-goalie first off the board for your team. Like, I think Columbus has drafted so much over the last little while that if they wanted to take a goalie, whatever. Like, okay, if you really believe that this guy could be a number one goaltender, all-star level guy indefinitely, and you've drafted 10 times a year for what feels like a decade, you probably will be okay if you miss on one, right? Like, I'm not saying I would do it, but I could see it. Ravensburgen is a guy who I've always felt a little bit cooler on than other people. I feel like, you know, he's a guy who I think relies on just how big he is a lot more than I would think, than I would like. He's a player who I feel gets like turned around and is a little clunky in the net from what I've seen, but he does recover quite well and, you know, still manages to find pucks and stop them and all that stuff. Like, he's, I don't know, I'm not a goaltending expert, but I wouldn't pick him in the first round, but I guess I could see why a team would. But when I look at Columbus, is that the first direction I'd look? Like, I don't think so. I think there could be a very intriguing player available for them that could be a really big, you know, a nice addition for them. Like, the only defenseman they've drafted high in the draft, they traded away. And there's Matejchuk. Matejchuk's the only one left, right? They traded Jiricek. And so that kind of opens things up for me where it's like, at 14th overall, there might be someone available that I think might be a really interesting addition for Columbus. A guy like Jackson Smith comes to mind. A guy like Blake Fiddler comes to mind. I think Blake Fiddler might be a bit of a reach at 14, but in terms of good, stable defenseman who can skate, and he's a right-hand shot, and I think he played really well at the U18s, there might be something to that. We'll see, like, if a Victor Eklund or something is available at 14 by some miracle, then that would
That's what we
be
want.
that would be a huge pull for Columbus, and I would have a hard time saying no to that. But again, I was on Locked On Mammoth last night, and we were talking about Utah with the 4th overall pick and what do they do. And I think that if you're a team that is relatively young, like Columbus, and when I watch Columbus, a lot of the players that I notice a lot are the young ones. I think that bodes well for the future. And if you're a team that barely missed the playoffs and you are looking at a 14th overall pick, you have 2 first-round picks, and I look at this roster and I go, yep, they could use some more firepower maybe up front, maybe a more physical, you know, like, I see them as going, you might trade that 14th overall pick for, in this draft class, someone that who you drafted 14 might turn into one day, right? Like, and you're skipping all of the middle uncertainty, right? You might go out and get a third line center, you know, or a third line winger who really plays physical and high energy hockey or something. You might get that with your 14th overall pick and then some, you know, I don't know, but you can get something that helps your team literally today, because I get the feeling that unless it is like a Victor Eklund, you're looking at guys who are probably 2 years away, 3 years away maybe, and you're not super interested in that if you're Columbus, especially when you have so much cap space to play with. And you can go, well, that gives us flexibility to add someone who gets paid a lot and would be very impactful for us. And you're our job openings. So if I'm Columbus, I'm thinking instead of goalie, which is uncertain and really long-term, I'm going, I want to make the playoffs next year. And this is a really good opportunity for me to add something. I want to make the playoffs and I have lots of cap space and I barely missed the playoffs. That's a really good combination to have for me. So I'd be very curious what kind of offers you get on those picks. I mean, also in that range of the draft in this year's class, I also might consider just moving one for something and then trading down with the other one and just getting more volume. Because I think, you know, you might add a couple of second round picks and get some good players that are available later on in the second round, right? Like, that happens every year, and Columbus has capitalized on those as well. So you never really know. But this is a very interesting position for them. I think there's a few teams in this position where it's like you're close to being a competitive team, but you're just a little bit of a ways away, and it might make sense to accelerate things a little bit and land that piece that really helps you get into the top 16 teams of the league.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of where I fall on this is a pretty weak draft, all things considered. If there's no one that, like, if Victor Eklund is there at 14, then all bets are off, because I love him. And
I think you do it.
I want him on the Blue Jackets.
Yep.
You know, but if you get there and there's no one there that you are really kind of crazy about, then yeah, I think of all years, I think this year makes sense. Don Waddell has already said that he's open to trading at least one pick, which makes me think that he's probably listening to offers on both picks. However, obviously you mentioned a couple of guys there. Blake Fiddler is a guy that we've talked about on the show before. He was a Tony Ferrari recommendation, so right. I assume that it's always good if Tony recommends him, right? But I know that I know that, again, you and I have talked on your show about some other options. I know that you've mentioned Liz Lakovic. I know that you've mentioned Colin Potter as options. There's Carter Bear, who's a potential option. Malcolm Spence is another guy, and he's just committed to Michigan, which basically means, like, I think legally they have to pick him.
Potentially, yes. It's very likely.
I don't know the exact rules there, but I think it might be. I think it might be in one of the bylaws.
Right.
There are options at 13th and 20th, right? So if they do keep those picks, I keep saying 13th. They got bogged down because of stupid Utah. Who are you taking at 14th and 20th overall? Like, I don't know, like, who's on your board there?
Well, I think you kind of outlined exactly who's on that list. Like, if a Victor Eklund is there, if a Cullen Potter is there, those are the two guys I'd probably want the most. If not those guys, I think you've drafted a lot of guys similar to Cullen Potter over the years, maybe. You have Brindley, you have Whitelaw, you have these really speedy, sort of smaller guys who have some maybe hockey sense issues, but you can kind of learn and try to build on that. Like a Bill Zanon, I should say. I've been saying his name wrong literally all season long. He's a guy that I might consider in the middle of that first round, even at 20, if he's there. I imagine he probably will be, but I think he plays a very projectable NHL style game that I think Columbus fans would also really love. Like, he is just a bowling ball of a player, and I love him for that, but he also has some skill and there's finesse to his game. I think there's a lot of upside with him, and I think he's a little undervalued. I love a guy like Eric Nilsson at that 20th pick. If he's there, I think he had a really good under 18. I think he's a guy that could develop extremely well with regards to he's grown in the last little while. His parents are tall. He's pretty wiry, so there's physical development, and he's really, really, really smart. And so those are names that I think, other than the ones you mentioned, are the ones that are possibly likely available in that range that I might consider. Logan Hensler might be one that's available around there that I might think about as well. Like you said, this draft is very open to me past the first 6-5 picks. And depending on who you ask, what time of day, what the weather's like, there's a logical explanation for a whole bunch of different players for various different reasons, depending on what you think they are and what you think they could be. But I think there will be good options. But if it's the difference between, I draft a Bill Zanon, let's say it's set at 20, I'm hoping that he's maybe a third line winger center in the NHL in 5 years. Well, that's great, but I want to make the playoffs. So if it's 20th overall for what Bill Zanon might be, I might just do
that. Just draft Bill Zanon now.
Yeah. And I might just do it.
Yeah.
Right. I might just do it and try to make the playoffs. Because, like, what are we doing, right? You want to win. You want to win the Stanley Cup. And I don't think Columbus is really in a position where they can keep thinking, okay, well, in 5 years, right? In 5 years will be this, in 5 years will be that. Like, guys are playing. The guys they've drafted high are playing. I think it's time to start making those moves up the standings, I think, or at least trying to.
Yeah. I think no one was really expecting all of the young guys that took steps forward this year to do so.
Yeah.
Like Kromachenko, I think, improved his career high by like 40 points.
Oh,
he hit 30 goals.
Dude. Adam
Fantilli hit 30 goals. Like Ken Johnson, 20 goals. Dmitry Voronkov, 20 goals. Like Denton Matejchuk kind of just decided to make the team in mid-November.
And had Johnny Gaudreau been on the team this year, who knows what would have been possible, right? Like, that's the obviously tragic part of the season, is like this team with him on it, boy, that could have been very interesting. And so, I think now, not saying you have to like, I think by committee, they kind of filled out what he brought a little bit, but
you don't replace a player like that.
No, you don't. You don't just replace. Yeah. It's the Moneyball thing. We don't replace.
You can replace him in the aggregate.
We recreate him, right? Like, so maybe they kind of went in that direction a little bit and achieved that to a certain extent. And I think in Columbus now, my focus is like, I don't know. I think it's one of the more underrated places to play in the league. I think it's a really desirable location for a certain type of person. And I think if you do your homework, look around, dig under rocks and see what other people are willing to offer, and you can add that guy that's a really good fit for what Columbus is trying to do to take a step, and they're younger and they kind of fit with what the group is, then I think there's a lot of room. And maybe in the free agency, you use your cap space to bring in a more veteran style player, Brock Nelson, or I don't know, you bring someone in who brings sort of more of that veteran presence. And instead of a Matthew Olivier on your third line, you have a Kyle Palmieri or something, like just some guy who can fit in with the group and focus on the young guys, but keep taking steps forward. And I don't know. I'd be really optimistic about Columbus if they could pull something like that off.
Sure. Now, yeah, they've almost done it once. Now they just have to do the dang thing.
100%.
I know that it's a very busy time of year for you, and I've taken a lot of your time today. But where can, you've got a lot of work coming out about prospects. I know that you have your live show that you do twice a week. Like, where can people find all of the great work that you do about prospects on the internet?
Yes. So primarily you can go to YouTube, our YouTube channel, Scouching, where we have our reports that are now coming out. We have about 3 a week coming out. We had one come out today on Colin Potter. So if you want, you can check that out.
There you go.
We had Bill Zonin yesterday, and we got Cameron Schmidt coming out on Friday. We also, speaking of Tony Ferrari, he's part of our channel as well. He does his game tape show with us. So if you want to see interviews with these guys and see what they come off like as people and see some more video footage of them playing, you can check that out on our channel as well. I also run scouching.ca, where I have a subscription service over there for data analytics and databases for prospects, whether they're drafted, undrafted, whatever, visualization tools. We have a Discord server that's a lot of fun, so you can check that out as well at scouching.ca. And other than that, that's really all. We do live shows Mondays and Thursdays. For the playoffs, we're doing Mondays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Generally, Monday nights is when we do shows, but for the time being, because of the NHL playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, I should say, we're doing a bit of a different schedule. So subscribe, and you'll be able to keep up.
Hey, there you go. Go check out Scouching on YouTube, scouching.ca, and thanks for coming to talk about what feels like every Blue Jackets prospect. Well, yes. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. I try to chip in how I can. It's always good to see you.
And that's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow, I think we're going to have some fun, and we're going to talk about Mitch Marner. Should the Blue Jackets go for Mitch Marner? Should they try and acquire him? Or is that not the right move? Are they at the right time frame? Will this ruin the rebuild? Like, lots of questions about going after an elite piece like Mitch Marner. Obviously, there's the playoff conversation that needs to be had as well. So we're going to talk about all of that on tomorrow's episode. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.